Hello, dear students. Welcome to our first lecture series on strategic management. I am your instructor, Dr. Chimal. So, during the course of this subject, we will be talking about the textbook Strategic Management, Competitiveness and Globalization by Hitt, Ireland, and Hoskinson. All right. So let's start from our chapter 1. So, chapter 1, which is strategic management and the strategic competitiveness. So, this chapter basically provides an overview of the strategic management process. We call this SMP. So, basically, this chapter introduces a number of key terms and models that students, you know, they have to study in details throughout the chapter 2 to chapter 13. So basically students need to pay very careful attention to the concepts that are introduced in this chapter so that they can be well grounded in the strategic management processes concepts before we proceed to chapter 2 to chapter 13. So let's move to the next slide. So in this lecture, we will be covering two learning objectives. So first is define strategic competitiveness, strategy, competitive advantage, above average returns, and SMP, which is strategic management process. So our second learning objective would be define the competitive landscape, explain how globalization and technological changes shape it. Right? So let's move further. So, competitive advantage. So for example, I can give you the example of Netflix, Salesforce.com, Netflix, right? So, Salesforce.com, Netflix have both used technology to create superior value for customers, right? So it means something they have created which cannot be imitated by others. All right. So basically, strategic competitiveness is achieved when a firm successfully formulates and implements a value creation strategy. Right. So by implementing a value creation strategy that current and potential competitor are not simultaneously implementing and that competitors are unable to duplicate it or maybe find too difficult to imitate it. This we call this competitive advantage under competitive strategic competitiveness, right? So what is strategy? So remember, whenever you read the word strategy, so automatically assume that we are talking about something long term, right? So a strategy is a long term, right? Of course, it's an integral and coordinated set of commitments and actions designed to exploit core competencies and gain a competitive advantage, right? So remember, when choosing a strategy, firm make choices among competitive alternatives as the pathway for deciding how they will pursue strategic competitiveness. Of course, they will be having a number of options. For example, quality, low cost, niche marketing, right? So they need to choose one, right? So the chosen strategy indicates what the firm will and will not do, all right? So let's move further. So then I already explained it. So a firm's competitive advantage is when implementing a chosen strategy, it creates superior value to customers when competitors are not able to imitate or find it too difficult or expensive to attempt it. Alright? But remember, no competitive advantage is permanent. And why is that? Because every day, every month, every year we are having a new technology that are coming, of course, and organizations are accepting those technologies. Of course, they are accepting those technology because they are going to produce in massive scales, right? So that they can achieve economies of scales. So that's why firms continuously need to look for other opportunities for their competitive advantage. Some try to maintain the competitive advantage, some try to gain competitive advantage, and some try to go towards the competitive advantage. So how long a competitive advantage will last depend on how quickly competitors can acquire the skills needed to duplicate the benefits of the firm value creating strategy, right? Let's move with without a competitive advantage, or those that do not compete in attractive industries earn at best average returns. Alright? Which means if you do not have any competitive advantage, so you are just earning as others are earning. We call this zero economic profit. Economic profit. Zero. That doesn't mean that you are not earning. You are just earning according to your time and energies that you are investing in. Alright? So, average return is basically returns equal to those an investor expects to earn from other investments processing a similar amount of risk. So, over time, an inability to earn at least average returns results first in decline and eventually failure. Alright? So, if you are not looking forward for competitive advantage, ultimately your return would be average and then started to go below average, right? So forward, so in order to create or in order to remain on this above average return so that our investors are also happy, they will invest with us, our firms will remain in the business, right? So we basically go towards strategic management process, right? So it is a framework that can assist firms in their quest for strategic competitiveness, right? So strategic management process, or SMPs, I will call this SMP. It is a full set of commitments, decisions, actions firms take to achieve strategic competitiveness and earn above average returns. Alright? So it is a process that involves analysis, strategy, and performance. So we call this ASP model. Right? So it starts from analysis, which analyzes the external environment. Then it its internal organization and formulates and implements strategies to achieve the desired performance. So from analysis to strategy to performance. All right. So talk about graphically. So we have a flow chart here of SMP. So this is a figure 1.1 which illustrates the dynamic interrelated nature of elements of the strategic management process. See interlinks here as well, right? So every department is interrelated. So you see we have 13 chapter of this book, and every chapter is basically following this main model SMP, right? So let's start from the analysis. So analysis in the form of information gained by scrutinizing the internal environment, right? And then external environment, both, right? So, and then develop firm's vision and mission, all right? So the first step is to analyze both internal and external environment. And on the basis of that, you develop company's vision and mission. And then there is a strategy, which is strategic actions, so which are guided by firm's vision and mission. So you see, and they are represented by the subsequent implementation of all those strategic plans. So which we learn in our different chapters: corporate governance, organizational structure and control, right? The next one is the performance. So, of course, there is a desired performance. And what is desired performance? Above average return, right? And how we can gain the above average return? By having strategic advantage. So desired performance, strategic competitiveness, and above average return, it results when a firm is able to successfully formulate and implement value creating strategies that others are unable to imitate or copy, or it's too expensive for them to implement, right? And if you are seeing this special arrow here, we call this back. So of course, if you are not able to earn above average return and maintain strategic competitiveness, of course, you start from the first step of strategic management process. You again analyze, you again make a strategy, and then you go for performance. All right? Okay, let's move further. All right, so here comes our last learning objective for today's lecture, and that is describe the competitive landscape and explain how globalization and technological changes shape it. Right? Okay, so let's talk about the competitive landscape. So, what is competitive landscape? It can be described as one in which the fundamental nature of competition is changing in a number of the world's industries, right? So, further, the boundaries of industries are becoming blurred and more difficult to define. So, firm must understand the strategic implications and integrate digitalization, which is process of converting something to digital form, effective into their strategies. All right. So, for example, consider recent changes that have taken places in the telecommunication and TV industry. So, not only do the cable companies and satellite networks compete for entertainment revenues, but telecommunication companies also are stepping into the entertainment business through, you can say, the significant improvement of 5G, fiber optics, right? Partnership. So you have seen that, for example, the MSNBC, uh, let me tell you, MSNBC, which is co-owned by NBC, so which itself is owned by General Electric and Microsoft. So you see the boundaries. You see Microsoft is a software company, GE for General Electric company, and now they are entering into entertainment businesses, entertainment industries, right? So the boundaries are now becoming blur. So the contemporary competitive landscape that thus implies that traditional sources of competitive advantage, economies of scale, large advertising budgets may not be as important in the future as they were in the past, right? So conventional sources of they are no longer effective nowadays. So then, managers must adopt a new mindset that values flexibility, speed, innovation, integration, challenges that evolve from consistently changing conditions. Right? So, a term often used to describe the new realities of competition, and that is hyper competition, which is a condition where competitors engage in intense rivalry. Markets change quickly and often, and entry barriers are very, very low. Right? So, hyper competition basically makes it difficult for the firms to maintain competitive advantage. For example, it erodes their above average return because both companies are into price war, right? So other companies are, decreasing the price to gain its competitors' market share, and the other company also forced to decrease its price, and there is a price war. And what happened? It is difficult for them to attain above average return. So hyper competition is also a condition of rapidly escalating competition based on price, quality positioning, competition to create new know-how and establish first mover advantage, competition to protect or invade established product or geographic of markets. For example, the northern areas, this is our supremacy. We should be, maintaining our dominance over there. South, part of the country, we have low dominance, so we should maintain our current, status, or we should go for price war over there or not. It is like that. So there are two primary drivers that drive hypercompetition. Number one, emergence of global economy, which we'll talk about in next slides, and rapid technological change. So let's talk about first the global economy, and then we talk about the rapid technological change. So a global economy is one in which goods, services, people, skills, ideas move freely across geographic borders. So the emergence of this global economy results in a number of challenges and opportunities. For example, Europe is now the world's largest single market, despite all difficulties of adopting, you know, multiculturals and different currencies. They introduced a new currency called euro, right? So the European Union has become one of the world's largest markets with 700 million potential customers. All right. Similarly, today China is seen as extremely competitive market in which local market seeking MNCs fearlessly compete against other MNCs and local low cost producers, right? So China has long been viewed as a low cost producers, but here's an interesting twist. China is now exporter of local management talent as well, right? For example, Procter and Gamble, they also exports Chinese management talent. So it has been dispatching more Chinese abroad than it has been importing expats to China. Alright? So globalization is increasing economic independence among countries and their organizations as reflected in the flow of products, financial capital, knowledge across country borders. Similarly, the globalization is a product of large number of firms competing against one another in increasing number of global economies. While the increasing opportunities available in emerging economies is a major driver of growth in the size of the global economy. All right. Also, you can say that the financial capital basically might be obtained in one national market and used to buy raw materials in another market that is also going towards globalization. Similarly, finding cheaper raw material, people go for globalization. All right. Similarly, finding the opportunity or finding the new markets for their product, organization go for new markets, right? All right. So let's move. Global economy. So globalization has led to higher performance standards with respect to quality, cost, productivity, product introduction time, and operational inefficiencies. But remember, it has a risk as well. For example, liability of foreignness, which is called the risk of competing internationally. Sorry about my handwriting here, right? So, and also the amount of time required to learn to compete into new markets, or you can say that also the risk is over diversification beyond the firm's ability to successfully manage operations in multiple foreign markets. Right? So the point to emphasize is that his entry into international markets, even for firms with substantial experience in the global economy, requires effective use of the strategic management process. So, though the global markets are attractive strategic option for some companies, they are not only the only source of strategic competitiveness. In fact, for most companies, even for those capable of competing successfully in the market, in global market, it is critical to remain committed to and strategically competitive in domestic market as well. And domestic markets can be testing ground for possibly entering into international market, right? So let's move forward to the technology and technological changes. So three technological trends and conditions that are significantly altering the nature of competitions. They are increase increasing rate of technological change and diffusion, the information age, increasing knowledge intensity. So let's share some light on technology diffusion and disruptive technology. So both the rate of change and the introduction of new technologies, they have increased greatly over the past 1 decade or 2 decades. So a term that is used to describe a rapid and consistent replacement of current technologies by new information intensive technology is called perpetual innovation. So this implies that innovation must be continuous and carry a high priority for all the organization, right? High priority. So you have seen that when ChatGPT introduces, so even OpenAI introduces its ChatGPT, then Google went on red alert. Similarly, uh, Google introduces its own AI. Microsoft introduces its own AI, right? So the shorter product lifecycle that results from rapid diffusion of innovation often means that products may be replicated within very short times, which also places an extreme competitive pressure on the firms as well, right? Because every year you need to introduce a new model, new iPhone, right? New iPhone models, new mobile models, new car models, because technology is changing so fast. So, in fast and speed to market times, so they may be become a sole source of competitive advantage, like first mover, like what Tesla did. It entered into an EV industry first time mover and it became the industry leader at that time. And everybody knows now Tesla, right? So the rapid diffusion of innovation, they may have been patented for a source of competitive advantage. So let's talk further here. The information age. Like I was telling, the rapid diffusion of innovation, they may have, uh, you know, patents for a source of competitive advantage. So you can see that in uh, chemical and pharmaceutical industries, they always try to find new formulas, new medicines, and what they do, they go for patented. So which means information is also developing and shared rapidly. So data information are vital for the firm's effort to understand the needs. So right now you have seen a lot of drugs who are, you know, in developmental stage or in experimental stage on animals, and human trials are yet to be confirmed and they are already patented. You have seen on, on social media, cure of cancer has been discovered, and this kind of for example, the sugar cure has been discovered, and but when you try to read it, they are still on animal testing phase. right? So it means there's a huge information that's going on, and it's vital for the firms to know or to go through information related to its survival, maintaining its own strategic competitiveness. All right, especially to understand its customers and their needs so that it can implement strategies to satisfy customer needs. And also, when customer needs are fulfilled, of course, your revenue starts to shoot up, and your investors, stakeholders, they are also happy. So stakeholders, they are all those people or all those things that are affected by organizational decisions. For example, investors, employees, government, because government need to receive taxes, society, where the company is located, its nearby surrounding, whether they are protecting the environment or not. Nowadays, you have seen that the green environmental protection activism is there, right? So the most successful firms envision information technology, which is derived. Sorry. So the most successful firms envision information technology derived innovation as an opportunity to identify, serve new markets rather than as a threat to markets they serve currently. So you see, for example, Huawei was considered as mobile phone and server company and now entered into EV. Recently, Xiaomi also entered into the EV, right? So rather taking all those technologies as a threat, they have entered into in these opportunities to gain profit and maintain or diversify their revenues, right? And the third one was increasing knowledge intensity. So it is becoming increasingly apparent that knowledge, information, intelligence, expertise is a critical organizational resource, right? So many companies, they are working to convert the accumulated knowledge of their employees into corporate assets. Shareholder value, it's increasing influence by the value of the firm's intangible assets, all right, which is knowledge. And there is a stronger link between knowledge and innovation. Look at that, what Microsoft has: brilliant minds, software engineers who are developing all those beautiful technologies. All right. So how they can acquire the knowledge? By hiring educated and experienced employees, and they must be integrated into organizations to create capabilities and then apply to gain competitive advantage. So remember, knowledge is necessary for creating innovation. Because of inertia that can build over time, right? And it requires developing the capacity for continuous learning and applying quickly to new and up-to-date skills, a skill set achieved from learning. And also the last point is strategic flexibility increases the probability of dealing successfully with uncertainty, especially in hyper competitive environment where you are losing your above average return. So firms focus and past core competencies may actually slow change and strategic flexibility. For example, firms capable of rapidly and broadly applying what they learn achieve strategic flexibility and resulting capacity to change in a way that will increase the probability of succeeding in uncertain and hyper-competitive environment. Right? So how often are firms able to make this shift? So overall, does it take more efforts to make small periodic changes or to wait and make more dramatic changes when these become necessary? For that, we will be talking about the models that we will be learning in our next class, and we call those the industrial organizational model. We call this IO model to get the above average return. So in our next class, we talk about all those models. So that's all for our today's lecture. So please message me in our platform whether I am speaking too fast or I'm speaking too low, so that in our future recordings I would maintain that pace. All right, take care. See you. Bye bye.